just down in the workshop slash bedroom. Going to be doing a cleanup on this bareback Bronc Riggin. Label from previous owner. There's the name Deuce. I did look that up in the Canadian Pro Rodeo Association, and back in the 60s there was a Bob Deuce for bronc riding, but I believe this is labeled for a Jack. But certainly carries the name of Deuce. So that's an interesting little bit of history. This came from an old gentleman down in Lethbridge who used it as his Riggin. And no, his name was not Jack. Old rosin. Should clean up pretty nice. So, I'm just going to start with a nice deep scrubbing with Phoebing saddle soap. Got my bucket of warm water. Gonna have to figure out something to scrape off the old rosin. It's kind of cool. Interesting piece of hardware, for sure. So the way this handle is constructed, seems there are 2 layers of rawhide, along with 2 layers of veg tan sewn in. You can see the stitching pattern there. Comes up and around, nailed in place there, and then riveted underneath. Oh. What is it we have here? Let's get this out of the way. Lady Luck, perhaps? Mickey Mouse? Maybe? Dancerius Deuce. Son of a gun. Look at that handsome hombre. Goodness. Strange feeling cleaning up something that was at one point immensely personal to someone. Hopefully it can go on and go to use to someone else. Keep someone else from getting hurt and give them a good career. Alright, so now we can see most of the surface level grit and grime, excuse me, and dust has since been cleared off. Now for this hard, sticky stuff, I think what I'll do is use an awl, kind of chip away at it. Seems to pop off with a bit of scraping, so I'll have to do that. Kind of clean it up a little bit more. Maybe get underneath the handle, down in the crevices, and as I do that, should dry off a little bit more. Perhaps I'll scrub that a bit better. As it dries, it'll reach the point where it's ready for a coat of oil. So once we're at that stage, I'll let you know. Oh, and a side note, on the bottom of it, underneath, I intentionally left the drawings. Just seems to add to the history of the piece. We have officially gotten the handle to where it's clean enough, I would say. And underneath, it's not bad. Now it just needs to dry off a little bit more. And then we hit it with a coat of oil. And what I think I'll do is pull the cinch off and saddle soak the latigos fairly heavily. I'm not going to oil these because it makes them sticky, and you don't want them to be sticky. You want it to have good friction, but you want to be able to adjust it and tie it down. You helping? Hey! Bored. So, I pulled off the cinch, put a nice heavy coat of saddle soap on the latigos. Still a little bit extra I gotta work in there. And yeah, this is getting to the point where it's drying off and almost ready for a nice good coat of oil. Time for the oil. And I like to use just straight up no name olive oil. Some people say neat's foot oil or nothing when it comes to leather. But the Romans would use olive oil to to oil their harnesses for chariots and such. And look how far they got. And out of all the time I've been using olive oil, I've never had a piece of leather go rancid or rotten or what have you. At least not any more than it would have had I've just been using neat's foot oil. So olive oil is what I use, and I will continue to do so. Now, of course, I'll use neat's foot oil when I have it, but olive oil is just significantly cheaper. So I've got my little sponge here soaked up, and I'm just going to apply first coat. Now, something that people may not know, maybe you viewer, is that when it comes to leather, there is actually a point of too much oil where it can kind of reduce the life of the leather, so to speak. It can draw dirt, moisture, and just excess, particulate, I suppose it would be, into the pores of the leather, and it can really wear it down quicker than it would have been had they've just used a light coat. So I'm a big fan of just sort of starting off light. Not that what I'm putting on is particularly light, it is a fairly substantial coat, but I'm not soaking it. I'm just using what's in my sponge and giving it a good wipe down. And then I'm going to let that soak in, see how it looks, and if it still looks and feels like it could use a little bit more, then I'll add a little bit more. Getting underneath the handle, inside, kind of getting a bit extra in there because that's quite dry. And you can usually just sort of see, just like how you can see when your skin's dry. It's not too much different. It's just tan skin, really, plus some other chemicals and processes. But already, you can see much more life back into it. Just getting the inside here. Here's the proof I didn't clean off all the drawings. And the oil does tend to darken leather fairly substantially. So it's something to bear in mind if you dye a project and it comes out too light, or if you're doing a project and you need it to be a very specific color and you get it to that color, when you oil it, expect it to darken. Now it will lighten up again, but for that brief period, it's going to appear substantially darker than it will be just in its normal state. So there's the first coat of oil on the inside. We'll let that soak in and take a look at the outside again. Now, generally, I do like to oil to the point where these cracks start to plumb up and disappear. But sometimes they just run a little too deep and you risk substantially over oiling. So I have another product I'm going to add after the oil, and that should help kind of plumb it up even further, fill them in. And what I'm going to be using to seal it up is this stuff, Leather Better. It is pretty much mostly beeswax. I believe beeswax and citric acid. And I'm not paid to say this, but this is just the best stuff ever. So you just take out a little piece, kind of melt it in your hands, rub it around, warm it up, and then you just want to massage it in. It's the friction between you and whatever leather you're conditioning that'll work it into the pores. And once you put this stuff on, it seals it up quite nicely. So you can already see the difference. No Leather Better and with. Still a little dry, a little cracked, but this should help. Here's the other side before Leather Better, and here's after Leather Better on the other side. So we've since added all the Leather Better that I think is necessary. And we can see still a little bit cracked up here and there, but significantly better than it was. I'd say at least. Then on the other side, going to replace this rivet tomorrow because it is getting quite late and I'm going to go to bed. But once that rivet is replaced, it'll be ready to go to market and ready to get back out there and go back to work. All right, so here we are, next day. I'm just going to throw a rivet into that empty hole right there. Oh yeah, that'll work just fine. There we go. Pull out a burr, go on the end. That's what these little round pieces are called, burrs. Grab. I just use pieces of bearing steel for anvils. They work pretty good. Put that burr on. Get my little tool for that. So for copper rivets, use one of these rivet setters. It's just got a little post and then a little dome on it, or a little hole for the post and something to dome the end. So I'm going to put that there, grab myself trusty ball peen, and this is going to be loud. So I'm also going to grab hearing protection. Fair warning, loud noise coming up. There we go. That's set very nicely. Now, I'm just going to cut off the excess with a pair of side cutters. There we are. And I'm going to dome the end of the rivet using the dome portion to that right there. And I always like to give it a couple taps just with the flat part of the hammer to really lock it in and flatten it out. There we are. Now the other rivets on this are honestly not the best, so I'm going to give them just a little bit of a hammering. Really not too bad though, all things considered. Whew. Dusty. Hopefully that doesn't make me sick. That's that rivet taken care of. We all done, Noodle? Yes, we are. That's this bareback rigging. Ready to go. There's a new rivet we set. All cleaned up, oiled, and ready to be rode.